We're happy to have you here for today's webinar on IPUMS MICS about integrated microdata on women and children's health and well-being from around the world. I am excited to introduce you to today's presenter, Dr. Anna Bolgren. Dr. Bolgren received her PhD from the University of Minnesota's Humphrey School of Public Affairs with a focus in global policy and international development. Her background is in demography and population studies, and her primary research interests include children, adolescents, and maternal and newborn child health. Dr. Bolgren manages a skilled team to produce all aspects of IPUMS MICS and also oversees comparative research that highlights the unique benefits of IPUMS MICS and collaborates with colleagues as part of the IPUMS Global Health data team. With that, I'll turn it over to Anna.
Thanks, Kari. Welcome to the webinar, everyone. I am going to introduce myself and my colleagues. So like Kari said, I'm Anna Bolgren. I will be the main presenter today. You will be listening to my voice the whole time, but I'd also like to introduce Elizabeth Hager-Boyle and Meher Munir, who are also assisting today at the webinar. They will be answering your Q&A and helping me out with some of the background information. So some Zoom logistics before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to all participants after the fact. You can turn on and off closed captioning using the CC button at the Zoom controls. If you have any questions about Zoom or you're having any difficulties with Zoom, you can send those questions in the chat directly to the host, who is named IPUMS, that's Kari. And if you have any questions about the content, you could submit that using the Q&A tool, and that's where Liz and Meher will be answering the questions throughout. I will also take a break at several points throughout this webinar to answer some additional questions throughout. All of the Q&A will be also sent out after the webinar. So once again, the slides will be available, the recording will be available, and the questions will be available to all participants after the webinar. A big thank you to our funders and our partners. IPUMS MICS is funded by the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development grant. And we are housed at the University of Minnesota at the Institute of Social Research and Data Innovation with a partnership with the Minnesota Population Center. Also a big thank you and recognition of our partners at UNICEF and UNICEF MICS and all of the partner countries that UNICEF MICS works with to collect the data that we'll be talking about today. A brief outline of this webinar. I'll spend some time talking about what is UNICEF MICS, what's contained in the data. Then I'll transition to talking about IPUMS more broadly and IPUMS MICS. I will do a demonstration of the IPUMS MICS website and then show some examples of creative research that you can be doing with the IPUMS MICS data, and we'll close with any leftover Q&A questions. So to jump right in, the UNICEF MICS data, MICS stands for the Multiple Indicator Cluster Surveys, and these are surveys developed by UNICEF in the 1990s. And the data are collected primarily on children's health and well-being, but at its core, the MICS are a household survey. And the intention is to be able to track progress towards different goals, such as the Millennial Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals. UNICEF MICS partners with countries all over the world to collect and design these different surveys. You can see the countries in yellow on this map are the different partner countries that UNICEF works with, and you can see it's widespread across all different countries. At its core, the UNICEF MICS data is a nationally representative sample of households, and the sample design typically includes about 10,000 to 30,000 households. So these are very large samples of households. Most samples follow a multi-stage cluster design with a random sampling of households, and this is a fairly common survey design done to collect data on at a nationally representative scale. For example, the Demographic and Health Survey also has a really similar sampling design. So it's a sample of primarily households and the people who live in those households. So what kind of topics are collected in these different surveys? So the first topic is a household questionnaire. So like I said, households are sampled, and different questions about the household gather data on all of the members of the household in a household member roster. Also different characteristics of the household, such as the condition of the dwelling, whether or not the household has any livestock or different assets, the water and sanitation facilities of the household, such as the toilet type or access and availability of water. And some of the more recent UNICEF MICS samples also conduct a water quality test, which tests for E. coli in the household's water supply. After a basic household roster is conducted for each household, all individual women age 15 to 49 in the household are interviewed. And this is because one of the focuses of UNICEF MICS is on women's health and well-being. And so data collected on individual women include basic demographic information, fertility and birth history, contraceptive and family planning use and knowledge, including questions about unmet need, and maternal and newborn child health, specifically about the woman's last born child. In most, though not all of the samples, adult men in the household are also interviewed. And some of the topics that are asked of men are also shared with women, so all adults in the household. And some of these topics include different access to media and different technology use, sexual behavior and condom use, HIV and AIDS, domestic violence, and life satisfaction. So this is just a representation of what most, though not all, UNICEF MICS samples ask of adults in the household. The next interview conducted is with the mother or guardian of children under the age of 5. Again, this is because one of the main emphasis of UNICEF is on children's health and well-being. So for these younger children, basic demographic information is collected, questions about child illness, including has the child had a cough, fever, or diarrhea, child functioning and disability, early childhood education and development, anthropometric measures, including the child's height and weight, are measured, and information about child discipline and discipline experiences for the under 5 children. A fairly unique feature of the UNICEF MICS surveys is the inclusion of an adolescent child or a child 5 to 17 years old in each household. So if a sampled household has a child in this age range, at least one child would be selected and sampled. And this provides great data and information about these adolescent children, including their demographics. The children have a literacy and numeracy test administered to them, so a quick reading test and some basic arithmetic and numerical recognition. Mothers or guardians are also asked questions about parental involvement in the child's schooling, child's experience with discipline, and also child labor. So this is a really cool and unique feature that is common across most of the more recent UNICEF MICS. So that's just a really high level summary of all of the different topics that are available in a typical UNICEF MICS survey. UNICEF does work with countries to customize and modify questions based on country priorities or topics of interest in a particular country, but typically all of the topics that I listed would be available for most countries in many of the years. To use the UNICEF MICS data, you can go to the UNICEF MICS website, register for an account, and get access to the data. And you can download the data by the sample, so for a particular country in a particular year. and the data can be downloaded in SPSS format for each of those different questionnaires that I just went through. Additionally, UNICEF provides country reports that summarize all of the different features of the data and describe the different questionnaires and the different way that the data are being used. The UNICEF MICS surveys are incredibly detailed and incredibly rich. They're very robust and do strive to be comparable across countries. However, because each country has unique priorities, there are differences that occur across time and across place. So now I'm going to shift gears to talk about what is IPUMS and where does IPUMS fit into this bigger picture of IPUMS MICS. So I'm not going to spend too much time describing IPUMS directly because there are a lot of other resources and a lot of other webinars that describe different IPUMS projects. But at a high level, the values and goals of IPUMS are pretty consistent across projects. So at IPUMS, we strive for integrated data, and that means that there's consistent coding, labels, and documentation for all of the data sets that we include. All IPUMS data are publicly available, free, anonymized, and downloadable. Most, though not all, of the IPUMS data are microdata, which includes individual level data. And because of our tenet of integration and harmonization, we strive to produce a series of data pooled across time and place. And this facilitates analysis across time and place within a particular data set. Key features of all IPUMS data, like I said, it's free, it's available for researchers as we are a grant-funded organization. We strive for harmonization across time and place through those consistent coding, labels, and variable names. All harmonization is thoroughly documented, as well as providing documentation on samples and variables in an interactive web user interface that I'll be demonstrating later with IPUMS MICS. And the goal of accessing that harmonized data through that web interface is to create a customized data extract. That includes the samples and the variables that are of interest to you across time and place. And this interactive website is easy to create such an extract. Across all of the IPUMS data collections, we have 1.4 billion records and 750 surveys total. And this is a representation of all of the different IPUMS projects, including US and international census data, different US survey projects, time use, health, higher education, and some spatial projects too. There are a lot of resources at IPUMS.org, and if you take away only one thing from this webinar, please let it be that IPUMS.org is the website to go to for information on anything IPUMS related. So next, I'm going to sort of merge these two concepts, what is IPUMS and what is MICS, to tell you about IPUMS MICS, which is the harmonization of the UNICEF MICS data for over 900 variables across 89 countries, 211 samples, and over 1,000 different data sets. As I said before, the UNICEF MICS data is incredibly rich. It can be downloaded one sample at a time. It's an SPSS format, and those SPSS files include all of the variables associated with that sample. The country reports also provide details and are available for the country or for the sample in PDF format. What we do at IPUMS MICS is we have taken all of those samples and we have provided harmonization across time and place. This harmonization takes the form of stata syntax files that will do the harmonization of all of the variables that you have selected. Currently in IPUMS MICS, we have about 60% of the most common variables included in our harmonization, and this number is growing every month as we continue to create harmonization for more and more variables. The other benefit of using an IPUMS mix as an interface to download harmonization and data is the user interface, where you can browse and discover variables and variable documentation. And this documentation includes information about the harmonized variables, but also about the original source variables. And all of this is thoroughly documented on our website, which I'll demonstrate next. Also at IPUMS MICS, we provide harmonized geographic files that can provide a visual representation of data over time. These geography files are for visual representation only. They do not reflect political boundaries and are in no way affiliated with UNICEF. These are the number of samples that we have included in IPUMS MICS. And you can see that the different colors here represent different rounds or phases of UNICEF MICS data collection. So every 5 years or so, UNICEF will look at the materials they've created and think about adding new topics, changing the way things are worded, and adding in new features. And so currently data is being collected in round 6, though UNICEF has just launched round 7 this last year. And there's some really cool innovations happening in round 7 that IPUMS is going to be very excited to share once those become publicly available. This is the distribution of the IPUMS MICS samples across country. You can see that there are 211 samples across 89 countries, and so therefore some countries have more than one sample, and this allows for analyses to be conducted across time within the same country. So on this map, the darker the purple, the more samples or the more years each country has included in IPUMS MICS. So if you go to ipums.org, you will see all of the different IPUMS data collections or data projects. And IPUMS MICS is housed within the IPUMS Global Health data collections with projects like IPUMS DHS and IPUMS PMA. And these 3 projects are related in that they all are survey data on from around the world, generally on health and well-being, but they are distinct projects. So going to the MICS homepage, the first thing that you will want to do in order to get access to IPUMS MICS is to create an account. And you can do so by clicking this purple button here that says register. You can also click the word register here on the left side menu. In order to register to use IPUMS MICS, you have to create a UNICEF MICS account. That is because all data access of IPUMS MICS is controlled by UNICEF. So in order to create a UNICEF account and to get approved to access the data, you register with UNICEF by filling in this form, including a short explanation of what you want to do with your access. And UNICEF will grant access typically within 1 to 3 business days or follow up with further questions. Back on IPUMS, you will enter those same UNICEF credentials when you log into the IPUMS MICS. And you can log in here at the top of the screen where it says login. And again, this is the UNICEF username and UNICEF password that you created to access the UNICEF MICS data. Going back to the IPUMS MICS homepage, the next thing I want to show you is our user guide and reference materials. That's can be found here on the left side where it says user guide. And the different user guides that we have available have a wide variety of information on the different aspects of the data, how to navigate the website, how to download and unzip and extract, and a lot of different tips and tricks on how to make the most of using the IPUMS MICS extract system. We are constantly adding to these user guides based on questions and Q&A. This is also where you will find the recording of this webinar, the slides for this webinar, and the Q&A features from this webinar will all be available as a user guide after this webinar. All right, so going back to the homepage once again, once you have registered for an account with UNICEF and you have looked through the user guides and gotten an idea of the different samples and data available, the next thing that you'll want to do is get data and start creating a custom data set. So you can click here in the purple box where it says get data, or you can click select data here at the top. Both will take you to the extract creation system. The next thing that you'll want to think about is what is the unit of analysis you are interested in doing analysis about. So what is the particular data set that you're interested in creating? And here you can see all of the different options that IPUMS MICS has available, including women, children, men, household members, and household characteristics. Now, this list of units of analysis should look pretty familiar because it maps on perfectly to the different household and individual questionnaires that make up the foundation of a UNICEF MICS survey. So the data that are collected by these questionnaires get converted into the creation of data sets. So basically, you will want to think about what's the topic of your research or your research question, and what types of variables are you interested in looking for. So for this example, I'm going to walk through the children 0 to 4 unit of analysis, and I'm going to select it. And you can see here that it says I am currently browsing the children 0 to 4. If you'd like to browse the variables available for a different unit of analysis, you can click this link that says change. Just know that if you change to a different unit of analysis, you are completely starting over and all progress will be lost with the current unit that you are browsing and selecting samples and data and variables for. So they operate completely independently, and I'll demonstrate a little at the end on how you can think across units of analysis. So next, you will want to select which samples you are interested in creating a data extract for. And the samples are all listed in this list. You can select by country, you can select by round, you can select individually by year. I'll also draw your attention to these little purple icons that have more information about a particular sample. You can also click onto the purple hyperlinks that make up each year, and that will give you a lot more information about the content and the design of a particular sample. Once you are happy with the samples that you've selected, you can submit the sample selection. And you can see up at the top that it says in your data cart, you have selected 16 samples. So a data cart operates pretty much like a shopping cart. You add in the samples that you're interested in creating an extract for, and then you add in the variables that you're interested in creating an extract for. So now that we have 16 samples, I'll walk through how to browse through the variables. One place to browse variables is by using these drop-down menus. And here you can see the different topics available for this child 0 to 4 unit of analysis. And I will be primarily focusing on these care of illness variables as highlighted in purple. This is the list of variables available under the broader group care of illness. And you can see that there are a lot of different variables available that have something to do with the child 0 to 4's illness experiences. I will select this variable cough because perhaps that's what I'm interested in for my research. And I can click on this variable cough in order to learn more about what does this variable mean. First, I can look at what types of codes and labels are available for the variable cough. And I can see here that there is a list of all of the samples that I've selected. And the X's in this situation indicate that that particular sample has a particular code available for it. It's perhaps a bit easier to understand if you select this toggle to show the case count view, and you can see exactly how many cases or how many frequencies for each sample are available at each label or code. The descriptions tab describes what this variable means, and in this case, the variable cough indicates whether the child had a cough in the last 2 weeks. The comparability tab documents different comparability issues or concerns across samples. In this example, the variable cough is comparable across samples, and I will show another example where the comparability might have something documented in it. This tab universe describes the universe for this variable cough for each of the samples involved. So as you can see from this list, most of these countries have the universe of children 0 to 4, and that's because we are browsing the variables available for the unit of analysis, children age 0 to 4. This will change depending on the variable. So it's very important to look at this universe tab for a lot of detail about what a particular variable means. The availability tab shows which samples this variable cough is available for. Even though I've selected only 16 samples, this availability tab will give me a list of all possible samples that have this variable included in it. And finally, this questionnaire text tab gives the exact source question that was used to integrate into the variable cough. So for this example, in Bangladesh 2006, the variable name from the original UNICEF MICS data was CA5, and the exact question that a mother or guardian was asked is, has name of the child had an illness with a cough anytime in the last 2 weeks? That is, since the day of the week, from the week before last. And you can see the exact text from the source material that is affiliated with this harmonized variable cough. If you'd like to know more about the different questionnaires and the different question wording for each particular sample, you can click these two links, text and image, and these will bring you to the original document that was used in the particular sample as provided in the country reports from UNICEF. What we've done here is we've distilled all of those documents down so that the information about a particular variable is available when you're browsing in a harmonized variable. So if I've looked through all this documentation and I've decided that this variable cough is right for my research question, I can click Add to Cart. And now you can see that in my data cart, I have 16 samples and 1 variable. So it's just adding variables into my cart. If I want to continue to browse variables or add more variables to my cart, I can return to the care of illness variable list and I can continue to browse. This cursor is showing the search feature, and so while I won't demonstrate it today because it's been there's other webinars and help tools that can show you how to use the search feature. The search tool can be a really powerful place to find variables, and you can search by name or topic and get a list of all of the variables that have certain keywords in there. So that can be a really great place to be browsing variables and topics. I will show just very briefly another example of this variable, dire zinc, which is a integrated variable that is about whether or not the child was given zinc tablets or syrup for diarrhea. Once again, I can see here that these are the different codes available for this harmonized variable, dire zinc. And you can see that the number of samples that I've selected is reduced because not all of the samples that I've selected have this variable included in the harmonization. This is an example of where we have documented additional comparability that are important for users to know about when they're deciding whether or not this variable is appropriate for their research. So in this case, we write, in some samples, surveys separately record whether the child receives zinc tablets or zinc syrup. These are also contained in separate variables, but in order to make this variable, dire zinc, comparable across all samples, we've chosen to harmonize such samples together into this single variable. Another way to sort of look at comparability issues is to look at the questionnaire text for specific countries, and this can give you a lot of insight into how particular countries asked a question in different ways. So just to continue on with this diarrhea, zinc tablets or syrup example, I'll show that the way the question was asked in Bangladesh 2012 is to select if the child was given zinc among the list of a bunch of different options for ways to treat diarrhea. So we've harmonized in dire zinc the code for zinc. In Bangladesh 2019 and Belarus 2019, the question was asked in a way that just captures whether or not the child was given zinc tablets or syrup as a binary in a single question. And in Belize 2015, you can see the question was asked both, was the child given zinc tablets and was the child given zinc syrup? So all of these different ways of asking about the same concept are harmonized together in the single variable dire zinc in IPUMS MICS. And so once you've looked through the comparability, you've looked through the questionnaire text, we've documented all types of comparability, things that you might want to be aware about. But if you've decided that this variable, dire zinc, is right for your research question, then you can also go ahead and add it to your cart. Once you're happy with the number of samples you've selected and the number of variables you've selected, you can click View Cart. And this brings you to a sort of a checkout of your data cart. Here you can see all of the samples you've selected, and you can also see the variable cough that we selected earlier. There are other variables that are pre-selected into your data cart, and these include things like sample identifiers, person identifiers, weighting variables, and other types of linking keys and codes that are generally useful in all types of analysis. At this point, you can add more variables or add more samples into your data cart until you're happy with everything that you have. Then you can click Create an Extract, and this will bring you to the Create an Extract page. We highly recommend describing your extract in this text box because if you're making multiple extracts, it can be very hard to remember what samples and what variables are included in each extract. So highly recommend writing something about what your extract is. At this point, before you submit an extract, you will need to log in if you haven't logged in already. And so this, again, is a login with your UNICEF credentials and you will have to register before you would be able to submit this extract. So once you've logged in, you can click Submit Extract. Now, at this point, I'm going to pause to say IPUMS MICS does not disseminate MICS data. Only UNICEF can disseminate and distribute MICS data due to partner agreements with different partner countries. So instead, what we do at IPUMS is we provide custom syntax files that run in Stata. And I'll walk through an example of how this works and how you would download the custom syntax file and download the datasets directly from UNICEF. So once again, when you go to submit your extract, you would click this purple button. You would be brought to the download my extracts page. You can also go straight to this page by clicking on My Data from any of the menus up at the top. And you can see here that I have 2 extracts, and one of them is complete, and I can download it from UNICEF. I'll also highlight the revision button at any point if you want to go and add more countries or more samples or more variables to a particular extract without starting over. This revision option is really, really useful. The way to get the data is to download straight from UNICEF. So you will click on this green button here, and this little piece of text will pop up and just let you know that you are being navigated away from an IPUMS webpage to a UNICEF webpage. And so it's just a warning to let you know exactly what's happening, but then you can go and continue to download your data directly from UNICEF. You will need to download your IPUMS extract from UNICEF using this web page for a particular extract that you've created. And so by clicking on this purple button, you are downloading your data and the harmonization syntax from UNICEF. When you download the data and the harmonization syntax from UNICEF, these are the files that you are downloading. And I'll just note that you do need to unzip these files, and there are a lot of instructions how to do this in the user guide and on other IPUMS tutorials. Once you have unzipped these files, you click on the Stata do file. So a do file is a Stata specific syntax file, and it will look like this. This is a very standard Stata syntax file. And one note is that you'll need to make sure that you set your working directory to make sure that this data folder, the syntax folder, and the do file are all together. Otherwise, running this do file will not work. So that's just a little trick that does trip people up if they're not particularly familiar with Stata. In order to run this harmonization syntax, you click go or do on the do file, which is this little icon here. All of this do file will run all of the harmonization in the background automatically. You don't need to do anything else other than click do or go. And what you will be left with at the end is a harmonized data file that includes the samples you selected and the variables you selected. All of the harmonization is already done for you, and all of the and this data file only includes what you selected when you customized a data extract. At this point, you can start your analysis. You can start working directly in Stata, or if you're not a Stata user, this is the data set that you would save and then export into a different program such as SPSS, R, SAS. And this process to export one data file into a different format is very easy to do in Stata, but you do need Stata to run that initial do file. There are a lot of resources to learn more about everything I just demonstrated on the web, including the how to browse and select data, how to run and unzip an extract. There's a blog post on how to use Stata to make that extract. Like I said, these slides will be available after the webinar, and you'll be able to click on these hyperlinks to go and learn more. Additionally, IPUMS has a lot of really great resources on things that are in common across IPUMS projects, including unzipping files or navigating menus. The IPUMS YouTube channel is fantastic at and shows a lot of different tutorials on how to do different things. And the IPUMS user forum is a great place to ask questions if you haven't been able to find an answer to your question or problem in any other way. The user forum is monitored by IPUMS user support staff, and they post answers to questions, and you can also interact with other people's questions and answers too. So great resource for all things IPUMS. All right, I am going to finish up by describing some research things to note when you're using the IPUMS MICS resource. And the first thing is to just reiterate that each of these different units of analysis is independent. The data are not linked by UNICEF. And so if you're interested in thinking about a research question that connects different people in a household or includes information from a household onto a person, you will have to do that linking yourself. We do have a user guide on the web on how this works and a list of all of the key linking variables you would need. And we are planning on doing a specific webinar just on this linking topic sometime later this spring or summer. So just a few examples of research questions that would utilize the richness of data across units of analysis. This is an example research question that Liz and Meher and I have been working on that looks at paternal involvement in child rearing activities and how that might predict life satisfaction of mothers of under 5 children. So for this example, we are exploring life satisfaction from the women unit of analysis, and we're exploring child development topics such as does the child's father play, sing, or read to the child on the child 0 to 4 unit of analysis. So these two topics have to be downloaded separately and then linked because they're found on different units of analysis. But here is what you can do with that. You can produce a figure that in this figure shows that the more activities a father is involved with, the happier mothers tend to be. And this is pooling data from 30 different countries, all in round 6. Another example is thinking about a research question that might connect the children age 5 to 17 to some household characteristics about how that child might be involved in water fetching activities for the household. So to think about this question, we wanted to know how children 5 to 17 were being involved with child labor and water fetching activities on the 5 to 17-year-old unit of analysis. Additionally, we wanted to link that to household characteristics such as water access and availability found on the household characteristic unit of analysis. And finally, we also wanted to link in a household roster information from the household member unit of analysis in order to know more information about mothers and fathers of the children, and also details about the primary water fetcher in the household. So this question can be answered only when taking all 3 of these different units of analysis together and linking them. But here's an example of the proportion of children in Africa who are involved in water fetching as a way to demonstrate how this topic can be comparable across all of these different countries. And so once again, linking across units is a little confusing, but there's definitely resources in the user guides, and there's going to be a linking specific webinar coming soon. Finally, I want to give a bit of a promotion of the newly released harmonization at IPUMS. We just released last week. And this includes harmonization on brand new variables in child labor, alcohol and tobacco use, victimization, energy use, and household assets. And we also provide harmonization for now 9 new samples, including the latest Afghanistan, Fiji, Vietnam, Nigeria, Uzbekistan, and Thailand samples, and 2 regions in Pakistan. And so all of this is hot off the press, just released last week. We anticipate adding in harmonization for new variables and samples sometime early this summer. Other things that we're working on at IPUMS MICS, we are presenting at a variety of webinars and conferences and giving conference workshop presentations. So you can find us at UAPS, PAA, and CUGH this spring. We're also working on new video tutorials and data exercises that can be used in classroom activities or other types of learning more about the data. We're also working on user notes that have specific code examples on how to better utilize the IPUMS MICS harmonization and data. And with that, I will conclude by saying a lot of resources are at the IPUMS MICS website, but if you have any questions about anything that you're seeing or that you've heard about today, you can always email our user support at ipums@umn.edu. Our user support team is absolutely fantastic. They answer 100% of the emails and try to get a very speedy turnaround. So please do reach out with any questions.